That's it. That I don't know if you watched WrestleMania Night 1 last night. I don't think most people noticed something very big happened last night that I don't think anyone booked, but it actually was a big event. Last night was one the end of the New Day breakup story push, and two, this is pretty much the end of Kofi Kingston's career. Um, Arguably the greatest black wrestler of all time. I think my issue is he could have been one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, regardless of race, if he was handled correctly. But that's another story. Um, an illustrious career, I can say, partially carried WWE for a couple of years. That was it, and to say it was booked terribly, which it was booked terribly. For once, I can say this might not have been Triple H's fault. Not entirely, let's just say. Um, I've heard, I don't know about you, but we've heard the New Day say essentially, they don't want to break up. They think it's corny that every team has to break up. So I can't really put this all on Triple H. But where I can put it on Triple H is you had two WrestleMania worthy event, WrestleMania event or whatever, stories in this breakup. I'm not going to say main event, but you had two WrestleMania worthy stories in this breakup. You had the first one, which had lava heat, where Kofi and Xavier were going to go their separate ways. They threw shots at each other. Kofi essentially said, let's start it the right way. Xavier took credit for Kofi ever having won the main title, the WWE, the number one title. He took credit for that, right? He said it was him that brought him to that point. And then Kofi shot back saying, "Who are you to talk? You've never had a single title," right? So, you had a great story right there where it could have been feuding. If it's not directly throwing blows at each other initially, they could be going through their push towards WrestleMania, where they could have been winning titles, having shots at the titles or whatever the case may be, comparing their success amongst each other, and then a final a match maybe for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania. It could have been booked like that. Like I said, maybe New Day rejected that because they don't want the breakup, even though they essentially broke up because they kicked Big E out. Nonetheless, but let's get to that point, right? Like I said before, maybe that's not Triple H's fault. So then you have what went from lava heat to radioactive heat, where the New Day anniversary, 10-year anniversary came, and they broke up. Well, they didn't break up. They kicked or broke up with Big E, right? So this was radioactive. It was on non-wrestling dedicated social media. People were talking about it. It was getting a bunch of views, right? It was a big story. And it involved Big E coming to the ring and talking about how what Kofi and Xavier were saying to each other was very hurtful, and that he doesn't recognize those two people he saw, and how he's going to remind them who they are, what kind of team we are. We're brothers, and he's going to come out every week and he's going to cheer for them until his neck injury heals and he can go back in the competition. Shortly after that, Xavier pretty much revealed that, the chances of his neck really healing and him coming back to competition is probably never going to happen. That was a kind of a revelation to all of us. And so we said, okay, us being the expert bookers we are as fans, we said, okay. Maybe Big E can't come back, right? Worst case scenario, Big E can't come back, right? Best case scenario, Big E heals a little bit. We see him at WrestleMania. No. Matter of fact, we might see him at Rumble. He might return, be in the Rumble match, right? But worst case scenario, he comes out weekly or every once in a while, cheers for the Big E, interrupts matches, makes them lose matches because they're distracted or whatever, helps them win matches. You could go either way, right? That's the simple story. It's easy, right? That's the easy booking. We didn't get that. We got the New Day being rejected by everybody, rejected by the crowd, by their own families, by the locker room. So to the point they couldn't even change in the locker room. And there was an argument over that for weeks. So Rumble comes up, no Big E. I'm pissed. What's going on here? No Big E at the Rumble. He wasn't there on the build up to the Rumble. Okay, there's one thing left. There's one shot left. Right? If he's not going to show up after the Rumble, we got one shot left. To really build to a good story, maybe he comes back at WrestleMania. Right? The granddaddy of them all. The Big Show. So the New Day had their match on Mania Night 1 last night. They go up against the War Raiders, right? And they beat the War Raiders in possibly one of the worst matches of the night. Mind you, Big E are at these events, part of the pre-show. You telling me you couldn't take Big E from catering and say, Big E, go out to the match and support Kofi and Xavier, right? There would have been a big argument. The crowd would have popped, right? They would have distracted them. Maybe they would have lost. Maybe they would have won. Maybe Big E could have joined the War Raiders. You had so many directions you could go, and you could have took the bottom, the worst match of the night, most likely, and made it one of the biggest events that happened in Night 1. And Night 1 could have looked a lot better than it does right now, because a lot of people are down on Night 1, losing hope for Night 2, but Night 2's booking is better, right? You could have said we had the Roman plot twist, right? Face turn, and then we had the New Day face turn, or Big E coming back, pop. That story actually has a culmination or maybe a continuation. But no, couldn't do that. Nothing special for the New Day, and you had it in the palm of your hands. Why even put the New Day on WrestleMania if you have nothing for them? Right? You might as well put the Street Profits. Not that it would have made much of a difference, but what was this? What are we selling? And it's really sad because Kofi did a lot for this for this company. He's one of the few characters that can legit be over for a decade as a face. Legit. And Kofi Mania happens, right? At really at no, it wasn't part of WWE's plan. They were forced to do Kofi Mania. Kofi Mania ends in the most embarrassing fashion, with Kofi losing to Brock Lesnar in 8 seconds. He never got his redemption for that. He never got his match back with Brock Lesnar. Even if he would have lost, he could have at least tried to get us a rematch to save face, right? To make it a longer match, to compete a little bit better. Even if the New Day turned heel then and helped Kofi beat Brock. So that's a stain to his career, right? Then he didn't even try to get back in the singles scene. He just faded away into the dead tag teams division, right? All that happens, and mind you, the New Day wasn't even created by creative. They didn't even book the New Day. The New Day had to create themselves. Talk about not giving a darn about. I'm not even going to go into that again, because there's obviously a group of black folk out there that think it's race hustling. Nonetheless, they didn't even create the New Day. They had nothing for Kofi. They had nothing for Xavier. They had nothing for Big E. They had nothing for these 3 wrestlers that, with their own minds, they're not even bookers. They created their own brands, sold tons of merch, was over for years, helped carry this company. And this is the way they're going out. I've seen New Day merch in places where that has nothing to do with wrestling. Content creators that cover the NFL have a Booty-O's cereal box in the background of their podcast. That's how big the New Day was. And creative never gave a crap about them. Never gave a crap about them. Always tried to make them a tag team, a 3-man tag team, not a faction like the Shield. They could have easily been a faction like the Shield and picked up a bunch of titles. And Kofi has all the charisma in the world. He has the in-ring. He was over with the crowd. But for some reason, he was never used. Never became what I believe he could have been. What I believe someone with those kind of tools usually become. I don't understand it. How else do you explain something like this? So regardless of what you see them holding the Raw Tag Team Championship, it means nothing. The tag team division is dead. And they're not revitalizing it because they had their chance to revitalize it during Mania. And the worst part is it kind of leaves their career seemingly unfulfilled. You know, based on the potential they have, them being over, they were over for a long time. They were a fan favorite for a long time, and it never really capitalized on it. When you really think about it, you know, with the New Day, outside of the, you know, first couple years or whatever, it's been a lot of mediocrity. You know, you compare it to the Shield, they came in, they were over. They separated, they won their world championships, their WWE titles, their this title, their that title, their main event this, main event that. I just felt like the New Day had the same potential, just not in the same way. You know, the Shield was a lot more serious, but the New Day has tons of potential as far as just being entertainers and winning titles. And what they said about each other with the initial breakup That's what this story should have been about. This should have been about Xavier finally winning that singles title. Multiple single titles. It should have been Kofi main eventing WrestleMania. Winning maybe one more WWE title or world title. Right? It should have been that feud between them in the comparison, and then at the end you could come back together. But we didn't get anything. It was just Monday Night Raw level booking, and culminated with a Monday Night Raw level match at WrestleMania. So the New Day story, breakup story that could have been great, was wasted, and I guess no one cares, no one knows why, but just further evidence. I'm not going to talk about what kind of further evidence that is, but it sucks to see. Oh well. With that being said, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it was informative if you weren't following night one. And what do you think about this? Did you see the New Day breakup, and did you think it was going to end with something much better? The story writing would have been much better than this? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe. I'm gonna keep covering wrestling, but I think I'm gonna cover it my own special way. With that being said, have a good Sunday. If you're gonna watch night two, hopefully it's better. I'm not very much looking forward to it, but enjoy your Sunday. Have a good one. Peace.